Sir Martin had been watching the distant mountain tops from the time their path had taken them above where the trees did not grow. The wind was far stronger without the protection of trees, and the higher altitude brought cold and difficulty in breathing. The path had changed from a grassy cushion to a loose rubble to solid black rock patched with snow. Further on awaited swirly icy gusts and frozen ridges. They had not seen any signs of other travel. No trace of Lady Marlena's direction presented itself. At the crest of a bleak little plateau, Sir Martin saw the opportunity for rest and evaluation of their course. The party of 8 sturdy men dismounted and encircled themselves with their horses. It provided some shield from the sting of sleet and allowed for a fire to be built. Bread and dried meat was washed down, with field tea to fill their stomachs. "Lady Marlena could not have gone this far alone," commented Breck, the Fletcher from Shirebrook. "She has more than 2 days' lead on us," added Roderick Timms. "Any signs we could have followed or lost? Our own tracks do not remain." He gestured back down the mountainside. "We are charged with finding the king's mother," said Sir Martin, trying to stop any discouraging thoughts. "Would you not want a vigilant search for your own mother?" Artem squinted as his eyes outlined the crests far ahead of them. He thought to himself that the Movkins could surely track Lady Marlena despite this unforgiving terrain. Then he questioned why he might be thinking such things. Maybe the conditions were affecting his ability to think rationally. He shook his head. Bits of snow and ice flung from his hair. The voices of the others became vague. At a great distance to the northwest, a tiny spot was forming on the horizon. Artem walked over to Driftwood and gently nudged him to the side. Driftwood shifted, as though he was a gate in the wall of horses. Artem stepped forward, keeping fixed on the spot so that he would not lose it. It was growing. Something was coming their way, and it was coming fast. "Artem," called Sir Martin. Artem just shook his hand behind himself, brushing off Sir Martin's request. The strange something was a gigantic bird, so it appeared. It would soon be close enough to be sure of its identity. Sir Martin picked up a chunk of frozen snow and threw it at Artem. It thumped in the middle of his back. Still, he did not respond. Breck noticed what Artem was concentrating on, and he drew his bow. "Artem, get back," grunted Breck, pulling back his bowstring. Artem spun around and spread his arms wide apart and shouted, "Hold!" Breck's target plunged into the crevasse, out of sight beyond the edge of the cliff where Artem was standing. Before anyone else could react, a dragon came from below, grabbed Artem by the shoulders and carried him up through a spinning blur of snow. Briefly heard was the sound of the soaring beast when it took him. Then Driftwood snorted. Finally, the whistling of ice pellets propelled against the rock was all that was audible. Artem was gone. Sir Martin shoved both men and horse out of his way. Frustration came over him, and he raised his fists to the sky and roared, "Roar!" Artem reached up and took hold of the dragon's legs to bear some of his own weight. Its claws were squeezing but not crushing. His most vivid fear was that he would fall. There was no sense of danger from the dragon itself, because on its back was a striking maiden. She appeared to be as much a warrior as any man. Just as vibrant as the most skilled horseman was she upon this beast. He was pacified by a notion that no harm would come to him. There was a faint, trailing signal of smoke coming from a notch formed by 2 nearby ridges. Obviously, this was their destination. The ground came up quickly under Artem's feet when the dragon landed. It dropped him from a forgiving height and hovered for a moment before its feet touched the ground. Artem stood amazed. He was standing on lush grass. There were bushes and a few trees surrounding a small stone cabin. The greenery covered no more space than the jousting arena. By some enchantment, this haven existed among the harshness of the Celestian mountains. When Artem looked at the dragon maiden, he realized his mouth had been hanging open. Disbelief and surprise wrestled within his thoughts. The dragon maiden came toward him. He stepped back cautiously. "You seek Lady Marlena, do you not?" the dragon maiden asked. "What is this place?" was the first of countless questions Artem wanted to ask. "Not every question has an answer," she replied. "I am bound to reveal only that which you might be able to discover for yourself. I cannot tell you of the things you need not know." "Do you live here?" asked Artem, keeping his inquiries simple. "This is the home of the Frost Wizard," she explained. "Lady Marlena is with him." "What is your name?" Artem didn't want to pry. "An introduction is in order, I feel. It is not, perhaps." The dragon maiden held out her hand. Artem stepped closer and put his hand in hers. "Give me the flower you took from the meadow," she said. "How did—" Artem stopped himself, then reached into his pocket, took out the black flower and placed it in her hand. The flower was still shimmering, as it was the day he picked it. She brushed back his sleeve and, slowly, rubbed the flower onto his forearm. It burned like fire and he tried to pull away, but she matched his strength with ease and held his arm steady. The flower began to melt into his skin. The stains it left behind were taking a distinct shape. Clariel drifted back to the day that he had received that wound. It was many years ago. She was a princess then, and Artem was Joseph, son of Thomas, the protector of Treotia. Both of them were stolen away from the lives they loved on the same painful afternoon, when Volthos plucked them from the meadow, shattered their families, and pointed them each in a new direction. Artem looked from his arm to her eyes. His own eyes were wide, his breathing was quickened, and his heart pounded. The visions he had seen when he held that sword from the meadow were in his mind again. This time they were not broken. The events of that day were being driven back into his memory, and it hurt his head. Waves of nerve endings were charging from head to foot and back again. Artem looked down at his arm. There was a telling black scar there. The dragon maiden had let go. His eyes once again met hers. "Clariel," he said with astonishment. The dragon growled and shuddered its wings. The dragon maiden just looked back at him for a moment and carefully considered the consequences of forfeiting her identity. From over her shoulder, she felt Grabra watching with protective intent. She nodded, affirming that she indeed was Clariel, then turned and looked at Grabra, who shook her head from side to side, insisting that this trip should be kept very short. "Come inside," invited Clariel. "I want you to meet my mother." Artem followed her inside the cabin, where they found Lady Marlena and the Frost Wizard sitting down to some root soup with sour rolls and trading tales of times past. Lady Marlena had gone to search for this man, hoping he could control the ethereal forest with his magic. She became hopelessly lost in the Celestian mountains, and that brought Clariel to her rescue. Upon finding the Frost Wizard, she explained the plight of her people, and he sadly told her his own story. He was not a wizard in the magical sense at all, simply a wise old man. His name was Geneth, and he came from a place far beyond the Northland woods. His people were explorers, and he began his walk of learning in the days of King Daniel II. He charted through the ethereal forest, finding no favour among the townsfolk. He made his way to the Celestian mountains, where he discovered this place, a naturally occurring oasis of warmth among the frozen ledges. He felt solitude and stayed. He had no magic. There were mere tales of such things that he thought had been forgotten generations ago. As for his long life, he had no idea of its reason. It was the way of his people to start their travels at a very young age. They would choose a direction and just keep going. The time of his final resting was about to come. It is then he would make his last entry into the journal of his ancestors. "Mother," started Clariel, "this is Joseph. I believe he can help you." "Milady," said Artem as he bowed, "I am known as Artem." He swallowed his excitement. His mind spun trying to put things in their proper places. "I am quite familiar with the distress caused by the Therial forest, yet I know not what action I could take." "Please sit, Joseph, and I will tell you," said Clariel. There was a contagious smile on her face that infected everyone. She was stronger than she ever had been. Clariel grew into a person that any mother would be proud of. She always had a purpose, and never did she waver. "Call me Artem, if you please, dear Clariel," he requested. "You inspire me now, just as you did when we were last together." Artem remained in awe of his present company. "Hear me well, Artem," Clariel instructed, "for I must return to the Golden Isle in short time." Then she looked him straight in his eyes and told him what happened to Joseph and how he became Artem. "When you left the Golden Isle, a fantastic light shined down and removed any memory you had of your past. Your boat drifted to the shore on the far side of the Lake of the Mosses. The side one cannot come to by foot, the elusive other side of the lake. There the Movkin clanmaster took you in. You were to be taught the ways of the Therial forest. Volthos had chosen you to be the watcher of the wild. However, the clanmaster did not accept this choice because you were not born of this land. You were not a son of the Therial forest. So rejected by your teacher, you were left there to awaken, lost from all that you knew. As time passed, the Movkin clanmaster saw that you were becoming very true to heart and calm of mind. He also watched as the townsfolk grew to admire and respect you. They adopted you into their lives and made you a part of this land. That is why he has been trying to lure you back to him. The clanmaster recognizes your worthiness and seeks to make you the watcher of the wild as you were chosen to be. The Therial forest grows unbalanced by the absence of this watcher. You must take on this role and return order, or greater dangers will face the people. You carry the hope of the land, and you must wear it well." Clariel turned to her mother, gave her the last hug she would ever give, and kissed her on the cheek. Lady Marlena held on to her daughter, not wanting to let go, but she knew there was a different destiny calling. She kissed Clariel on the forehead and said, "Goodbye, dearest daughter." Clariel gave Artem one last glance, ran out to Grabra, jumped on the dragon's back and flew away.